These are the voicemails that you left to your girlfriend.
Number one for real afternoon sports talk.
Offsides with Mark Bryant.
3 to 7 on the
14 seconds.
jackpot for Tuesday is $1.1 billion. Be sure to stop by your local South Carolina Education Lottery retailer and get your ticket today. See steducationlottery.com for jackpot odds and a store near you.
The Rob Brown Show back on your radio. This is the fan upstate. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Rob Brown. Man, Brandon filling in for the great one. He is out sick today. We are glad to have you. The stream is up now. If you guys in the stream will let me know if you can hear me or not. Lonzo usually sets up the stream before I run it. I think I got it right. So check it out. Let me know in the stream if you can hear me. Facebook.com/thefan-upstate. There's an echo, so let me kill that off, and now we should be good. The Fan Upstate on Facebook. You can also go to Twitch or YouTube and search and subscribe to the Rob Brown Show.
Lots of feedback.
If you get there and click on listen, you should be able to check it out. Let me know if it is. Let me know if it's fixed. I think. And we'll have to figure it out during the break. Hang on tight, stream. We'll get it. Oh, there we go. All right, we're good to go. Perfect. Beautiful. I love it. Just like Georgia, I'll figure it out. The Bulldogs last night decimating, absolutely rocking the TCU Horned Frogs. It was not fun. All right. Georgia had, if I recall correctly, 3 drives that did not end in a touchdown. They had 1 punt. They had 1 field goal. And everything else was a touchdown, with the exception of the end of the game where they took a knee. Punt, field goal, took a knee at the end of the game. And those were the only drives that didn't end in touchdowns. TCU, I spent a lot of time last week. In fact, at a little shindig yesterday evening, my buddy Kev was there. Our buddy Kevin from downstairs was there. And he said, imagine if you did a college football national championship preview and you said that TCU's defensive discipline would keep them in this game publicly. That would be embarrassing. It was. That was me. Oops, my bad. I genuinely thought that TCU throwing some different looks at Stetson Bennett IV, that TCU out of a modified 3-3 and adapted 3-3 would have a real opportunity to create a little confusion for Stet Bennett IV. He was not confused at all.
You got to tip your cap to TCU, though, because they can hang with the big boys now.
I mean, we said that. They weren't even close to hanging last night, right? Then again, with the exception of Mizzou and Ohio State, Georgia beat the hell out of everybody, right? But TCU got put under the brightest lights last night, and they were not ready. Now, in fairness, TCU had never been there before. Georgia played for and won a natty last year. TCU had never been in the playoff. Georgia's been there a handful of times, right? This is one of those spots where, I've been doing this gig for 15 years. You can crack a mic on a local radio station. Rob Brown's got no problem jumping in and making himself the main character. If tomorrow I get called and they say, hey, Rob, we're taking your show into national syndication, yeah, I'm going to be nervous, right? I was nervous till I didn't show it because I nailed it when I came up here for my audition. It's the biggest market I would have broadcasted in, with the exception of Jacksonville, where I was basically like a 6-stringer, right? And I was hella nervous. But you either perform or you don't, and TCU just didn't. They just didn't. Offensively, Max Duggan looked confused. He looked put off. The offensive line had nothing for an NFL caliber defensive line. And again, the South Carolina fans can attest, very few teams did this year. They had no answer for if everything broke down, Stet Bennett just putting the ball in his armpit and taking off. That first touchdown run that Stet Bennett had, the first touchdown run that Stetson Bennett had, he went, what, 18 untouched?
21.
21 untouched. 21 untouched. And it was just embarrassing, man. It was just embarrassing. TCU wasn't ready. They weren't ready for that stage. They weren't ready for the lights. They weren't ready for the best college football had to offer. Ohio State is a very good team with a Heisman finalist at quarterback, with a defense full of guys that will, based on previous experience, all be playing for the New Orleans Saints one day. Very good team, and a team with experience under those lights. They weren't afraid. They were able to attack Georgia. TCU went to the playoff against Michigan. Let's not forget that TCU was very close to blowing the game against the Wolverines. Very close to losing that game against Michigan. And of course, transitive property of football doesn't work. You can't carry the results of one game over to another and go, this is normal. TCU played the best game they played all year against Michigan, and then the worst game they played all year against Georgia. They just weren't ready. Georgia knows how to get up for a big game. They did it in the regular season. They did it in the SEC championship game. They did it against a very good Ohio State team and got away with one, because just like we can't forget that TCU almost blew it against Michigan, Ohio State was the biggest shanked field goal of all time away from beating Georgia. And last night would have been Ohio State TCU. Would the results have been different? Don't know. What I do know is Georgia figured out a way to beat an Ohio State team that was very good under the lights, and they were more than ready for last night against TCU. TCU, on the other hand, almost blew it to Michigan, figured out how to get it right. And even Sonny Dykes said in his post-game interview yesterday afternoon, we just did not get it. We didn't do enough to get them ready for this game. They clearly did not. The second half of that game is tough to talk about because I was just kind of barely watching it, right? I was having more fun talking with folks. I was having more fun telling stories. I was having more fun texting with people than watching the game, which is disappointing because we had, I think, the best night of college football semifinals since the college football playoffs began on New Year's Eve. 2 incredible football games. And then we followed it up with that, which is disappointing. It's not going to hurt college football. Before anybody comes on and goes, well, it's going to hurt college. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not going to hurt college football. It's fine. A really good team, loaded down with NFL talent, up to bottom, left to right, came out and beat a team that I pointed out that if this game is decided by talent and not by tactics, which I'd say it was, if this game is determined by talent, not tactics, Georgia's going to win by 35. Georgia came into that game with more than 40 players who were 4 or 5-star recruits. TCU came in with 14. And like 4 or 5 of them came out of the transfer portal, right? I will say this. I had hoped that was going to be good because TCU giving a good game, not necessarily winning, but TCU playing a good game last night would have increased parity in college football, right? You'd start having, hopefully, some 4 or 5 star guys that maybe come out of TCU's backyard that go, you know what? School like TCU can get it done now. They can get in. And they showed that. That's great. They showed that you can get in at a smaller school. If they'd have competed last night, that would have grown. That would have been better. Not only can they get in, but they can compete with the big dogs. Unfortunately, they set it backwards. Tyler West showed up in the Facebook chat. He said, hello and good morning. TCU was a JUCO team posing as a Power 5 playoff contender. Can't blame TCU, though. The CFP committee is to blame for this. TCU never belonged in the playoffs to begin with. K-State proved that, and the committee ignored it.
I think Michigan had something to say about that, too.
Yeah. I mean, they came in and they beat the Big Ten champions, right? Unless you're going to say that the Big Ten is weak and the Big Ten doesn't count because they're a down conference or whatever. But if you're going to say that, again, transitive property of football is dangerous. Don't get caught up in it. But Michigan beat Ohio State. Ohio State turned around and lost to Georgia, but probably should have won that game, right? If your field goal kicker doesn't absolutely blow it at the end, Ohio State beats Georgia, right? So I respectfully can't agree with that. I think TCU was a good team. I think TCU did belong. I think the committee was absolutely correct in putting them in, right? There's a lot of teams that have gone, did not win their conference, but showed up in the playoffs and wrecked and made noise. TCU did not win their conference after going undefeated in the regular season. They took one loss to a top 15 team in Kansas State. They turned around. They beat the number 2 team in the country last week and then just got the hell beat out of them. To say they don't belong, Tyler, with all due respect, I don't agree with that. I think they did belong. I can't say with any level of certainty that if Michigan had gotten by TCU, that Michigan wouldn't have also got their asses kicked last night. I'm relatively comfortable saying Georgia would have dominated. The way they played last night, Georgia would have beat anybody. They'd have beat Bama. They'd have beat Clemson. They'd have beat Michigan.
Anyone.
They'd have beat everybody. No questions asked. They would have beaten everybody.
They asked Kirby Smart in the beginning of the game, what is the one thing you're focusing on? He said the only word that came out of his mouth was aggression.
Yeah. Now, I appreciate that out of Kirby Smart. Georgia had that game plan down perfectly. Kirby Smart's an analytical mind, man. He gets it. He looked at TCU. He recognized the spots that were going to put Max Duggan in trouble, and he put him in trouble. In fact, the one of the times I early in the game I thought TCU might be in trouble was the opening drive. TCU ran a option pat. No, scratch that. Ran a route tree that included the running back coming out, running a 7-yard out on 3rd and 8 or whatever it was. This is a play TCU ran so many times during the regular season, and it worked to perfection, right? It worked to perfection in you had 2 receivers to that side. You run 1 deep and 1 underneath, so that way the cornerback and safety have to make a decision on where they go. You run the running back out to fill the vacant spot, and then Duggan looks out there. You do your best to set up 3 routes going to one side of the field where 2 defenders are, and make those 2 defenders decide who they're going to cover and pick the open guy. Duggan ran to the right, was getting chased down because the Georgia defensive line dominated the TCU offensive line from start to finish. Rolled to the outside, was under pressure getting chased. Picked the running back who was open, and Georgia just out-athleted them to the ball. Duggan had to throw it low and away to give the running back a chance without it getting picked, and he spiked the nose of the ball in the dirt. And if Max Duggan can't hit a running back on a 5 or 7 yard out, it's going to be a long night. Boy, howdy was it. We'll keep talking about this game. I do want your reaction to what happened last night. When we come back here in a minute, Kirk Herbstreit broke down what he thinks Kirby Smart is, how he's carving out his legacy. I'll let you hear that, and then I'll respond to it. And I want to get your thoughts, because it is kind of interesting in that if you didn't hear Kirk Herbstreit say Kirby Smart's name, there's another coach I'd have thought he's talking about, but obviously Kirby Smart's at the top of the food chain right now. I'll play you that audio when we come back on the Rob Brown Show. This is the Fan Upstate. All right, streamers, I got to walk over there and set up Brandon's computer to play audio. Give me about a minute, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Hudson said the starters got pulled in a natty with over 13 minutes left. I mean, come on. Yeah, no, listen, I'm not arguing that wasn't pathetic. It was pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that the I'll tell you why I'll tell you when we come back why I'm frustrated, but I'll get into it when we come back. I'll tell you now, but I'll get into it when we come back. I am frustrated by this because much like I was last year when Cincinnati finally kind of broke the hump and got a small school in and then got absolutely just
Manhandled.
the hell beat out of them. You're going to continue to hear people say that smaller schools should not get in. And I think we're going to leave some pretty good teams out and teams that are on a special run out with that mentality, especially after, and this was always my problem with the two-team setup, is we would always leave a team out, and even if we let one in, something like that might happen. Everybody is going to remember TCU getting beat by 59 or whatever it was and conveniently forget that they put up a 50 spot on Michigan, the Big Ten champions.
Today. 30 seconds.
That's $30 to use toward everything from food to tech. Save big right now at Staples, the working and learning store. Rewards members only. Store bonus redeemable in store only. Offer ends 1/21.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate. I'm going to play a pick of audio here. Kirk Herbstreit was talking about Kirby Smart last night. Obviously, Kirby going back-to-back. First time a team has gone back-to-back since Nick Saban did it with the Crimson Tide back in 2011-2012. Nick Saban, after that back-to-back, we started talking dynasty. Obviously, Nick Saban built one. Kirby Smart is in the process of doing so. Kirk Herbstreit was talking about Kirby Smart last night, and he said this. That's exactly what I said yesterday. That is what I said leading up to this. That's what I said about Kirby last year. Last year we were asking, has Kirby Smart taken over Nick Saban's spot? Has the student become the master? And the answer is yes. And that is exactly why. Now, I think Kirk Herbstreit goes a little okay boomer on it there. You know, all these kids are just all about themselves. And it's like, yeah, I mean, aren't we all? Right? Like, aren't we all a little for ourselves? But we also, I think it's important that while looking out for number one, while looking out for yourself, that all of us also learn the importance of playing as a team, working on a team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Kirby Smart has found the balance, and this is I've been saying for a while. In the age of the portal, in the age of NIL, I have said for a very long time that the coaches from this point forward who are going to succeed because they find a way to take the, hey, it's okay to be an individual and it's okay to look out for yourself and your family. But if you want to do better for yourself and your family, pitching in and being part of a team is a great way to do it. Because you can absolutely go to Wake Forest and break out and be a big-time starter and get some NIL money and do all that. The boys who played for the Georgia Bulldogs in that game last night are going to be heroes around Athens, Georgia for the rest of their lives. Right?
Especially Bennett.
Yeah. Stetson, I heard the joke last night. You know, if Stetson Bennett wasn't a quarterback, he'd be an insurance agent. Stetson Bennett won't have to be an insurance agent or a banker or anything because that dude is going to get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by Georgia fans just to show up at places and be a hero.
Do you think he goes pro?
I don't know. I mean, I think he's done enough to warrant a look. Does he have NFL readiness? Then again, he did just go back-to-back in natties.
But
And
he's
looked
one of the
damn good
oldest,
doing it
too.
last night.
He's one of the oldest, too. I think he said it's like on the few.
He's Josh Allen's age.
Yeah, he's 25.
Yeah, he's Josh Allen's age, which is a drawback, but I don't know. And we'll get back to that conversation because I do think it's an interesting one. But I think that when you look at Kirby Smart and what he's doing with the Georgia Bulldogs, and by the way, my buddy Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta is going to join us in the next segment to talk about this. I think Kirby Smart is doing what I have been begging Dabo Swinney to do. Kirby Smart is doing with better talent what I think Shane Beamer is doing. There's one thing I think Shane is doing better than Dabo, right? It is to let these kids be themselves and express themselves and feel like they are important as an individual, while also building up the culture that if you want to go further, you will go further with a team built around you and being part of that unit than you will by yourself. Kirby Smart, in the age of the NIL, in the age of the portal, in the age of contemporary modern football, has allowed these guys. I drive through Georgia every time I go home, right? I drive through Georgia, through Atlanta, down through South Georgia into Alabama. I see billboards up with football players on the Georgia Bulldog program. I don't know who the hell they are. But they're out there getting that cheddar, and they're out there being themselves and expressing this identity, right? Like you go back to when Bama was at the top of their game, yeah? You go back to when Bama was at the top of the game, and what you will notice is that Bama had a very shirt and tie mentality on Saturday, right? Very business-like approach. In fact, I remember going to a game, Mississippi State at Alabama. Bama was up 35. They made a switch. They brought in the backup quarterback. He came in, missed the guy in the back of the end zone for a TD. I was 12 feet away from Saban as he ripped into this poor kid. I can't even remember who the backup was, but he ripped into this poor kid as if this poor kid owed him money. I mean, just let him have it. I'm like, you are up 35 points with 6 minutes left, dude. Maybe calm down. But then I realized that's how Nick Saban gets these guys to perform. And there is a type of player who is going to perform well under that type of coaching and that atmosphere and that environment. And Saban is better than anybody else. Yeah, that's right. Tyler, it was A.J. McCarron. That's exactly right. Thank you very much. Good eye. He can go and find guys who thrive in that type of environment, right? there are also guys who are not going to thrive under that type of environment. There are guys who are going to play their best ball when it is loose and everybody is having a good time. Everybody's having fun. Kirby is a lot more loose than Nick Saban is as a coach. He's intense on game day, but he's still a lot more loose than Saban is as a person. And there are guys that absolutely thrive under that system. I, for instance, am one of those cats, right? I have worked before for a boss who is just tight, you know what. And then I have bosses that go, hey, if your work's getting done, have fun. I'm out of your way. If you need anything, let me know. I'm out of your way until your work doesn't get done. Then I'll step back in. And that's the atmosphere I thrive in, right? So you go recruit guys who thrive under that type of system. And Kirby Smart has done that. We had this whole discussion when Frank Martin got fired at South Carolina. They brought in Lamont Paris. And half the South Carolina roster bailed. I said, look, that's okay. Because college basketball, maybe even more than college football, college basketball, you got to find guys who want to play for the coach and play for the atmosphere, not the school. Why do you think, if it was, you want to find a kid who wants to be or wants to be a Gamecock or a Tiger or a Bulldog or a Knoll or a Tide or every recruit nowadays announces the top 5. These are the 5 schools I'm interested in playing in. They're not diehard, right? You got to sell them on the atmosphere. You got to sell them on what you can do for them. Kirby Smart has done that, as Kirk Herbstreit pointed out, better than anybody else in the last couple of years, right? Now, I absolutely think that Dabo has a culture at Clemson that is special and unique. I will admit that. I've been there. I've seen it in action. But I also think that there is no room for, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this in a way that doesn't sound incendiary because I don't intend it to be. Dabo's got his culture, and if you don't fit within that culture perfectly, there's no room for you, right? There's no room for you. Well, with NIL, with the portal, with the way college football is shaped nowadays, kids coming in are recognizing that the program has a lot of value, but I have value too. And I want that value to be recognized by the school. I think Kirby's doing an excellent job, and I think Stetson Bennett is the fairy tale version of it. I think he's doing an excellent job at creating a world where kids want to come in, play for an intense university, but how much fun were those boys having on the sideline last night? How much fun would you... Alabama's gotten a little more like that the last couple of years, I think, compared to what they were in the, 2011 to 16, 15 years. But that's because Nick Saban adapts too. He sees that. While Kirby is the student and Saban is the master, Saban is a master because he is very good at looking at what other schools are doing to succeed and adopting the parts that fit Alabama. Nick, I don't think, a handful of years ago, would have allowed a lot of the stuff to happen on the sideline that Bama guys do now, but he's looking at what Kirby Smart has been building for the past 3 or 4 years at Georgia and recognizing that kids watch that on TV and go, hell yeah, that looks like fun. I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. I want to rock the Road Warrior shoulder pads on defense when I get a turnover. I want to be a part of that. And I think he's looking and going, that's what kids are attracted to. That's what we got to do here. And Shane's doing it at South Carolina, which is why they're trending up as well. All right, let's take a break. Let's put an hour in the books. When we come back in just a minute, my guy Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in the ATL is going to join us here on the show. He covers Georgia. We'll talk a little bit about what happened last night, whether Kirby Smart truly is in the midst of building a dynasty, and more. I am Rob Brown. My man Brandon filling in for Lonzo. We are back after this on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. This break should be long enough to take us right probably to 10:01.
Okay.
And I'm going to, you know how to work the phones, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I just need his number.
Yep. All right, guys, got to get Brandon a number. We will be right back. Stick around.
Mhm.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys for hanging out. Get all the Georgia fans showing up in the chat. You love it. Kevin, you were second place, dude. My man Cole checked in. Cole had Cole had the spread just a little bit wider than you. He went 45-14, just a touch wider than you, Kevin. If you'd have given Georgia a little more credit to beat down, you'd have got it. Very close. Kevin's pick was 41-14. Cole went 45-14.
I had to put 30 seconds in there.
Perfect.
It's you, but How long did it take you to do that? The pickle thing.
Read it on my first take.
Oh, wow.
That was a live take from the air. Excuse me. Hour numero dos. Let's get it, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. The Rob Brown Show is on your radio. This is the Fan Upstate. Welcome back, America. Great to be with you. Like to thank the Georgia Bulldogs for allowing the majority of my audience to go to bed at halftime and not have to stay up too late. My goodness, what a beatdown. I have asked the question and stated my answer is in the affirmative. Are the Georgia Bulldogs a dynasty after going back-to-back? Is that enough to justify being called a dynasty? I said yes. I think they are in the direction. My next guest is a longtime friend, both on and off the air. He is from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, Georgia. We used to work together down in the Florida Panhandle. Now we talk football via the internet and telephone. Abe Gordon joining us on the show. And Abe says there's one more qualification Georgia will have to click in order to call them a dynasty. What's up, big fella?
Rob Brown, how you doing, man? That was a heck of an effort from the Bulldogs last night. It was honestly the most astonishing thing I've ever witnessed in a championship game. And look, we all felt that Ohio State, the game against Ohio State was really the national championship. Whoever faced TCU out of that game was going to win it all, and rightfully so. But I mean, boy, you just saw in a national championship game the biggest margin of victory in FBS bowl game history, and not in the Hula Bowl or the Meineke Car Care Bowl, in the national championship game. It's wild to have sat there and witnessed that.
We were talking back in the first hour about the impact this game is going to have in different ways on college football. There's a lot of people that are going to conveniently forget that TCU beat the Big Ten champions en route to taking on Georgia and kind of try to push the narrative that schools outside of the Blue Bloods should not be there. I kind of argue the opposite, which is, hey, TCU's a good team, but Georgia's going to rank, this Georgia team will rank up there with 2019 LSU as one of the best teams we ever watched play, and they saved their best and biggest moment for the brightest lights, Abe Gordon.
Yeah, blue blood or not, it didn't matter yesterday. The way Georgia was playing, they're going to beat up on Michigan. They certainly wouldn't play Ohio State to a missed field goal at the end. If they played the way they did last night against Ohio State a week and a half ago, we're not even talking about should Georgia. I mean, they would have beat anyone in the college game last night. When they play well, when Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, is calling the game in the manner in which he called, there's no college team this season that was going to even come close to slowing Georgia down. So, look, TCU deserved to be there. And I know, look, the Bama fans had their discussion. That ended when they beat Michigan. TCU played their way in all season. They played their way in the semifinal game. They deserve to be there. It's unfortunate that that's the end result after the season they had, probably the best in school history, unless we're going back to the 30s and 40s. But that's just what this Georgia team is. And you saw it last year, right? When Georgia lost Alabama and came back and whooped them and sent a number of draft picks in the first and second round. They're going to do that again this year. And I got some bad news for you, Rob. They're probably going to do it again next year. And now I don't know if they're going three-peat, but in terms of top draft picks next year, they're going to have plenty. They're going to have plenty go in the first round again.
Talk to me a little bit about that. We were talking in the last segment. My take on Kirby Smart, and I've said this in the past, and Kirk Herbstreit said it last night, Abe, that Kirby Smart, I think, has taken all the lessons that he got from Nick Saban and then has kind of applied them in the modern age of college football, which includes understanding that kids want to be valued by the university the way that they value the football team they're playing for, et cetera. So he's gotten very good at not just running a football team like Nick Saban did and built his dynasty at Bama, but also understanding that you've got to make the kids at Georgia feel like Kirby Smart and the football team and the university value them the same way, which is why I genuinely believe Kirby Smart is the new Nick Saban. I'm not quite ready to say he has surpassed Nick Saban, but he's nipping at his heels. Was last night both the dominant team that he built this year, the win last night, and the fact that you mentioned sending multiple first and second rounders to the league last year. We'll do it again this year, and it looks like they're going to reload again. Where does Kirby Smart stand in the world of college football coaches today?
All right, so I want to work in regards to Kirby and Saban first, and then I'll get to the dynasty aspect of Kirby and what he's building at Georgia. Look, Kirby has surpassed Nick Saban in the current moment. He has not surpassed Nick Saban all time. I mean, let's not get it twisted. Let's not be, a prisoner of the moment here. Kirby's won back-to-back championships, right? Saban's already done that. Saban added a couple more beyond that. So Saban's got every accolade you need. Heisman winners, which Kirby doesn't have. Number one overall picks, which Kirby just got last year. And so in the moment, it's easy to put Kirby and Saban right there. And, yeah, the program currently, Georgia is better right now than Alabama. But when you're talking about a stretch of 20 years, Kirby still has quite or 15 years, whatever it is. Kirby still has quite a bit to go to reach Saban in terms of the all-time discussion. But the biggest step towards that, and when you played that Kirby soundbite, or excuse me, the Kirk Herbstreit soundbite last segment, this discussion of NIL, it's such a cop-out. Like, it makes me laugh. It's such a cop-out because it's not about the NIL deals. Kirby's not worried about recruiting against other schools who can offer more NIL deals. You know why? Because of exactly what you just said. Kirby Smart puts guys in the NFL at the top of the draft. And there is no amount of NIL offer that will replace the idea of going to the NFL and making multi-million dollars as a rookie. There simply isn't. He put 5 guys in the first round last year. They're looking at 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 this year. You got guys like Brock Bowers who will go in the first round, Darnell Washington. You saw a bunch of crazy freshmen, defensive linemen and secondary guys yesterday. I mean that sort of thing, putting guys in the NFL is a much better recruiting tool than saying, hey, I can get you $50K right now. I can get you $100K right now. Yeah, 3 years with me, buddy, you're going to be making $15 million. It's just a much better recruiting tool.
Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in the ATL joining us here on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate, talking about last night. In fact, I'm asking you that question, and as I'm doing it, Abe, I'm looking at the TV, and Feinbaum is on right now answering the question, has Georgia replaced Alabama as the top dog in college football? And I'm like, they're holding 2 trophies. Like, I'm not saying they have surpassed them in terms of, as you just pointed out, Kirby's got to get another, 2 or 3 before we can say he has surpassed Saban overall. But I absolutely think right now Georgia football is the standard of college football.
You can't sit here, Rob, and tell me, and I know you're not, but Paul or anyone else, you can't sit here and tell me that Alabama is the hunted and Georgia's a hunter. No. Georgia is absolutely the team that is being hunted. Alabama, and we saw it from the look on Saban's face when David Pollock gave him straight truth last night. Alabama's a hunter right now. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that Alabama is a hunter.
Yeah, no, listen, I think for years when we watched what Saban was doing at Alabama, and we talked about the fact that he was revolutionizing the game, good or bad, whether you like the style of play of Alabama or not, which, I told the story. I was at the game when they smoked Mississippi State, and A.J. McCarron was out there playing quarterback at a backup role. They were up like 35 in the late 4th in a game that clearly Mississippi State was not going to make a run at him. And Nick Saban was just absolutely given everything he had to the backup quarterback who missed the touchdown route. Kirby is doing the same thing, except he's got a much, in my opinion, Abe, a much looser style of coaching while still being a phenomenal X's and O's guy. And in what college football has morphed into over the last couple of years, where kids are beginning to recognize their value as opposed to their value to the university, Kirby Smart and the way he is orchestrating and putting together and recruiting at the University of Georgia, I think is maybe the only guy that is a threat to be the next Nick Saban.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, Rob, a lot of that has to be given credit to Kirby stepping aside and allowing his staff to do their jobs. We saw Alabama's offense open up when Lane Kiffin came, and those two butted heads. Saban and Kiffin butted heads, and finally, and I wouldn't say Kiffin won out, but Saban let Kiffin do his job and run the offense, and we started to see 40, 50, 60-point efforts from the Crimson Tide. I think on both sides of the ball, which is even more impressive because Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning just left for Oregon, had a great year there in his first year, former defensive coordinator. Will Muschamp put together, obviously, a great game plan yesterday, but also Todd Monken, obviously, has called such a great game yesterday. But all throughout, I mean, to be able to do it with a guy like Stetson Bennett, that's ultimate trust in your coordinators. And I know we talk about Saban and some of the people who have branched out from his tree. You take a look at Kirby Smart's tree. It's actually pretty impressive in a short time span, with a couple, guys still to be determined in terms of, Landing in the long run and Mel Tucker in the long run. But it's actually pretty impressive. And, Todd Monken, Muschamp, those two guys might be next on the list.
We are talking to Abe Gordon out of 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, Georgia, a little bit about what the Dogs accomplished last night and just absolutely walking TCU out of the building. And our buddy Tim Frisbee, Abe, former South Carolina Gamecock wide receiver, just tweeted the show. He said, Abe needs to stop. Georgia played a great game, but the committee did not get it right putting TCU in. Fact is, Georgia probably would not have dominated Bama on their best night, needed multiple injuries by the Tide last year to overcoming. And I've already responded to Tim and said I think Tim is making a mistake that, with all due respect, Tim knows that, but making a mistake that I've already heard a lot of people doing on broadcasts around the country this morning in forgetting what TCU did to get here. I think they look at the loss to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game, a game in which all of us already believed TCU was locked into the playoffs, unless Kansas State walked them by 60. They were already locked into the playoffs, so eyes were probably turned to the semi, and conveniently forgetting they knocked off the Big Ten champion to get there. I think last night, Abe, was a commendation for where Georgia is more than it was a knock on TCU for sneaking in the back door somehow.
Yeah, with all due respect to Tim, and look, part of what he's saying is accurate. Like, I don't think Georgia would 65-7 Alabama or Ohio State, but the Georgia team we saw last night's not losing a game to anyone in the country. There's not a single team you could have put in there instead of TCU that's beating Georgia. Will it be more competitive? Sure, of course. But let's be serious. They're beating every single team in college football with the effort they had last night. Doesn't matter who it was.
We are talking to Abe Gordon, 92.9 The Game in Atlanta here on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. So you said, and we teased this at the beginning, Abe, that you're not quite ready to hang the dynasty flag over the University of Georgia. And you said there was one more qualification you needed to see Kirby Smart hit in order to do that. Stet Bennett has been phenomenal for the University of Georgia. Stet Bennett ends his career with a 29-3 record. He was a Heisman Trophy finalist, an SEC champion, an all-SEC selection, a two-time college football national champion, offensive MVP, and a two-time college football national champion. Obviously, Abe, big shoes to fill from a guy that was non-scholarship, that was a transfer in and out and back in. Stetson Bennett is obviously going down in Georgia lore. How good do you believe Stetson is? Was it Kirby that pushed him to this level of greatness? And does the next guy, question mark about who it is, does the next guy have the ability to be coached up to be Stetson Bennett the fourth, volume 2.0?
Well, I think that's a big question that everyone's going to be asking next season, right? And it, for now, I mean, look, Stetson was outstanding, and I know you were talking before, last segment about his NFL potential. He's absolutely going to be in the NFL. Now, to what extent, I don't know. He'll be drafted late. He'll make someone's team as a backup or a third quarterback, a practice squad guy. I don't see him starting. But then again, I mean, look who started in the NFL this year, right? Jarrett Stidham, Mike White, Brock Purdy. I mean, these are guys that Stetson is at least equals to. And he makes some impressive throws and impressive reads. And his athleticism is a bonus as well. To your point with Stetson at Georgia, I don't know if what they did the past 2 years is because of him or because of a system. And whether it's Carson Beck, who we saw a little bit of last year, who probably is the front runner to be the quarterback next year, whether it's Brock Vandagriff, who's a former 5-star, Gunnar Stockton, a former 5. I mean, I have 5 different guys that are former 5-stars there at Georgia. But I'm very interested to see exactly how they do look. I don't think Carson Beck is as dynamic as Stetson, but I think that offense is not going to slow down much next year. Now, I want to ask you a question before I wrap up with my thoughts on, is Georgia a dynasty? Right now, or in recent memory, who would you say are the last dynasty or 2 dynasties?
Bama.
Bama.
LSU.
Okay.
And there is a long-running debate around here, Abe, about whether Clemson qualified as a dynasty or not. I say they
let's
did.
Just take those 2. Yeah, I think they are too. So let's just take those 2. What do those 2 teams have in common that Georgia does not right now?
What do those 2 teams have in common that Georgia does not right now? A run of successful quarterbacks is where I think you're going here.
They have won championships, both Clemson and Alabama, with multiple quarterbacks, something that Kirby Smart has not done yet.
Sure.
I need to see it with another guy. They're right on the precipice of being a dynasty. They don't even need to three-peat, but if they can win one more in the next 2 or 3 years with a different quarterback not named Stetson Bennett, you can crown them a dynasty. That's all I need to see. I don't care that they're not going to have a Heisman winner. And I know you've been talking about the team mentality, and I think it showed. I mean, even for Stetson to get there was kind of wild, but he had no real shot at winning. They may not have a Heisman winner, but if they can win another championship with a different quarterback, I just need to see it done with a different guy to make sure it's not recession-proof. Once you do that, I'll go ahead and crown them dynasty.
My man, Abe Gordon from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, Georgia. If you want to follow him on Twitter, he, like me, very creative in the handle department. He is at Abe Gordon on Twitter. Abe, you are a legend, brother. Thanks for coming on, big dog.
I appreciate it, man. We'll catch up soon.
You know we will. Abe Gordon on Twitter, at Abe Gordon. You can check him out at 92.9 The Game in the ATL. Love talking Georgia sports with my guy. Speaking of, Brandon's a big Falcons guy. You know, we're going to talk some NFC South later. How does that division stop being a dumpster fire?
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about it later on in the show. We'll get away from the college football natty because, frankly, like, what else do you want to say, right? I mean, we can get into the stats, the X's and O's. We might a little bit later in the show, but let's be real with each other. That game was entertaining only in the way that car crashes are entertaining. You know what I mean? Like, for just a minute, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm seeing this. And then the next thought is everybody okay? Are they hurt? Should we call a doctor? Let's take a break. We'll come back. Your thoughts are welcome. Hit me up on the phone line at 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663, or text us at 71307. Start your text with FAN. I'll run through some of your text when we come back on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
A little early, my bad.
No, that's all good. I talked a lot on the out. Tyler said, "Can we just ban Michigan from entering the
Yeah,
playoffs?"
I saw that.
Chris said, "True story to make things even worse for the Maize and Blue. Michigan will be taking a step back after Harbaugh jumps back to the NFL, maybe as soon as the season." Yeah, he's.
I think he's gonna do it.
I think he is too, especially after the investigations started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, with all respect, multiple things can be true. We can say Georgia was out of this world great last night, and the Horned Frogs were just as atrocious. No, that's exactly what I said and feel, right?
Yep.
Like the Horned Frogs are the Horned Frogs had their worst performance of the year last year, but I do think a part of the reason they had their worst performance of the year last year was because of how damn good Georgia was.
Nobody was gonna beat Georgia this year.
No. Not at all.
Nobody. Even that game against Missouri, it was destined for Georgia to win. I'm not going to add any time on there because we went over.
It's all good. The two breaks, the 15 to 20 break, and then the 35 break can float.
Yeah, they're soft.
4, 5, 6 minutes in either direction. And I'll just make up for it. We'll shorten up the last segment if we need to.
Okay.
And part of that is I like to flip those breaks around so that as people are driving around going to and from work that have weird schedules, I don't want somebody to get in the car and be like, "Oh, I'm in the car at 10:35. Rob's always at break, so I'm not even going to check in." Like I want him to check in and hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means everything to me and my family. After missing that kick.
Hudson, I don't agree with that.
And just the faith that they had in me. Obviously that
Panthers to Lamar to Carolina.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
You don't agree with that because you're a Falcons fan.
I don't know. I don't see that happening. I think Lamar stays in Baltimore.
I think they pissed Lamar off by not giving him his contract before the season started.
They didn't give. He needs an O-line is what he needs.
Correct. Carolina's offensive line, with the exception of Week 18, was pretty good this year. If they can get everybody back and make a cut. I mean, they got 8 draft picks this year. Like, they're going to draft some linemen.
Yeah.
And they're going to hit on 1 or 2.
Hopefully they don't mess their draft pick up and get another J.C. Horn. There's a lot of rumors that Lamar might go to Atlanta.
That's why you don't want him in Carolina.
I don't want him in Atlanta either.
Why?
I don't think he is that great of a quarterback.
Oh, man.
I think he's a good quarterback. I
Lamar's
think he's a great
baller.
quarterback.
We were talking about this last night, like the trend in recent years towards trying to find quarterbacks that have a lot of mobility.
Yeah.
To the point that I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that can throw, like Brock Purdy, like a lot of quarterbacks that can sit in the pocket and throw the ball, and teams are afraid, like they want to build a team around a guy who can move the field around.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, it's going to swing back around to where we go back to old school pocket passer quarterbacks who have excellent accuracy and delivery, but you've got to build an offensive line in front of them.
Mm-hmm. How am I doing?
Good, man.
Good.
I said this show to me is easy in its simplicity. I'm like the Eagles, you know. This show is a GCD guitar song, but it's really well constructed.
Mark's show is hard to do sometimes, but I like working with him. I like doing the sports side.
Sure.
It's a lot more fun.
I also, and the folks in the stream can confirm this, I also let people drive the show as much as I do.
Yeah.
So if we hit on something and a lot of people are chiming in on it, we're going to spend time on it. Mega Millions at 1.1 bill.
I don't know what I have my ticket. I don't know what I'd do if I won that money.
I would.
I'd
First
probably
off,
pass out.
and I told Lonzo this. Y'all would for the first couple months, y'all would not say I wouldn't bring it up. Y'all wouldn't see a change out of me. Y'all be driving the same car, living in the same house. Y'all wouldn't even know it. And then one day I would just disappear.
Yeah.
I would just disappear. The
I'd
next
probably
time you
pass
saw
out.
me, I would be live streaming sports from Jamaica.
32 seconds.
Sponsored by South Carolina Educational Lottery. There's plenty of gold to go around on the Gold Rush Series of scratch-offs with top prizes of $200,000 and $300,000. Players can choose
Did you see what Chris just said?
price point, and all long-win tickets are eligible for a $100,000 second chance.
Stead hitting Vegas. All right, I got a thing going with Diesel right now. Me, Carter Bryant. You guys know Carter, one of our fill-in guys, and we very much appreciate Carter's work. He stepped in for me while I was out on Christmas vacation. Did a great job. And Diesel are involved in a Twitter conversation that I am now bringing to the radio. Carter Bryant said in a tweet, under the handle Carter the Power, and his Twitter name is Bulls Matter. Carter said, expansion, all caps, obviously, expansion makes it easier for Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and LSU to get into the playoff. The experience, resources, depth, etc. can handle a 17-game schedule. TCU's path was much easier for them in a 14 format. 12-team, they are probably out by the semifinals. My response to that is, isn't that what we want, right? Isn't that what we want? Every year there's a team that people don't like getting in. This year it was TCU. They went out there and beat Michigan. Last year it was Cincinnati. As I pointed out, I thought they caught a phenomenal team in the playoffs, so they were kind of screwed from the start. Similar situation in that they just caught a team playing its best game that night, right? I said, isn't that what we want? Like, we're going to get some upsets. Occasionally, a better team's going to lose. But for the most part, a deeper playoff field makes it more likely that the best teams end up in the semis and in the finals. Carter responded by saying, no, because then the sport turns into just the playoff. LSU win. He said LSU's win in Baton Rouge over Alabama changed the course of college football history. South Carolina over Tennessee and Clemson did the same thing. I love that. So I have two responses to that. The first is the wins by South Carolina over Tennessee and Clemson absolutely changed the trajectory of South Carolina. They absolutely put Clemson and Tennessee on notice, right? There's a lot that came out of it. Did it impact bowl history? Maybe. South Carolina knocking off Clemson, I genuinely believe, kept Clemson out of the 14 playoff. Clemson would have been playing New Year's Eve if they did not lose 31-30 to the Gamecocks, right? South Carolina beating Tennessee may very well have done the thing. Tennessee would have needed a lot of help down those last 2 weeks of the road to sneak back in after the loss to Georgia in the same division. But South Carolina put the nail in that coffin and prevented it from happening. I don't disagree. But those teams getting in, was Clemson better than TCU? I don't think so, but maybe. And we'd had a good chance to find it out, right? Tennessee lost Hendon Hooker in that game against South Carolina. That kind of doomed them, although Joe Milton did a great job and came out and beat Clemson himself. But if Hendon Hooker's available for Tennessee, just because Tennessee lost to Georgia and would have needed some help to get back in, Was Tennessee better than TCU? I genuinely think at their best with Hendon Hooker, they were.
Yep.
They were. And they wouldn't have got a chance because they share a division with the University of Georgia and would not have gotten in, but they lost, so it doesn't matter. A deeper playoff field is going to create a world where you have a better opportunity for the true best 4 teams to play in the Final Four, the semifinals, the semifinals and the finals, what we currently have now. It makes it more likely we get the best teams. And even if for a number of years, those best teams keep coming out of the SEC, everybody else finally has the crack to beat them, right? The complaint in years past is, the SEC gets, they keep getting 2 teams in. It makes it harder for everybody else to keep the SEC locked out. It's like, yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not an SEC apologist. And a 12-team playoff, everybody's going to get the crack to line up and knock them out. And if what the SEC fans say is true, that they are just better than everybody else and it just means more, and they come out and they every year beat the Big Ten champ and beat the Big 12 champ and beat the ACC champ or whatever, that argument's out the window. Now they are provably, empirically better than everybody else, and you know that because you're getting beat on the field. The second thing that Carter said was that the Bulls matter and that moving to this spot makes the regular season matter less and the playoffs become the only thing that matters. My response to that was, dude, the playoffs are the only thing that matter already, right? Like I told Carter, I love him pushing that bowl games matter, but bowl games only matter to the 2 teams playing in them. There are still qualifications to get into the playoffs. You have to be a Big 5. Actually, you got to be, not only do you have to be a Power 5 conference champion, but you've got to be one of the better conference champions, right? They're going to drop the 5th conference champion as a guaranteed in, because what they don't want is a year where somebody wins the conference at 8-4 and they got to put an 8-4 team in. So the best 4 conference champs, we've already laid the plan out. We don't need to get back into it. But they put all of that into it, right? You've still got to qualify to get in. Right now, for those of you that swear it matters, who won the Independence Bowl this year? Who won the Cotton Bowl this year? That was a big one.
That was a big one.
Cotton Bowl was a big story. Who won the Cotton Bowl?
Tulane.
Who won the Liberty Bowl? You get my point?
Mm-hmm.
Bowl games matter. Very few of y'all can tell me who won those games. Hell, tell me who played in them. Right? I'll give you 2 teams. Tell me who played in them. Most of y'all.
Yeah, dude. Tulane and USC.
Yeah, Tulane USC was one of the big, and that's only because it was a massive upset, right? Massive upset. But the point here is to say that, and by the way, this is where Diesel checked in. Diesel said, flip side of that coin, you were the one pushing that they don't matter. Stop pushing that narrative. Double, triple, quadruple down that they do matter. Be the voice of authority that tells people all bowls matter. Stop being the self-fulfilling prophecy. Hey, me saying something matter doesn't make it matter to other people, right? We've had entire social movements that have been shut down because somebody said this is important and other people go, nah, not to me. Not to me. It's up to you to fight to prove that they matter, but you've got to prove that they matter. As I have said many, many times in my life, I believe a thing when you can show me the proof that it is to be believed, right? I don't take anything on faith, on somebody's word. You're going to prove to me. What was it? What was the Ronald Reagan quote? Trust but verify. Right? I don't even trust. Sure, the bowl game might be important to Diesel, and I'm sure that some of these bowl games are important to Diesel, but they don't matter. And by the way, I can almost guarantee you I watched more bowl games than the overwhelming majority of you, both because it is my job and because I don't have a real job. Okay? I mean, I have a real job in that it exists, but I don't have to go sit at a desk to talk about stuff all day. My job's to watch football. I watch more games, more bowl games than all of y'all. They don't matter. The TaxSlayer.com Gator Bowl mattered to South Carolina and Notre Dame. There are lessons that South Carolina and Notre Dame took away. But in the grand scope of college football, they don't matter. The Orange Bowl mattered to Clemson and Tennessee. Mattered to the coaches. Mattered to some of the players. The ones that don't opt out for whatever reason. Some of them, it matters so little they opt out. But they don't matter. And for the record, there's a lot of regular season games that do not matter. Kansas State versus Kansas doesn't really matter except to those two teams. Now, if it matters to you, show up, deck out, have a great time, enjoy your life. We're proud of you. Have a great time. If you're a Florida State fan, did that game matter in the national eye this year? No, not at all. I mean, it might matter in that there are some folks that think FSU's on the way back up and might challenge Clemson over the next couple of years. But in the grand scope of college football, even that regular season game didn't matter. And me just saying, yes, it does not make it true. That's not how that works. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this hour. So where do you fall in that debate between me, Carter, and Diesel? Where do you fall in that debate that, I say a 12-team playoff is going to make college football better. It's going to make the championship better. We'll get more parity, and that's better. Guys won't feel the need to go play only for Georgia or Bama because they're every year. Now, every team has a crack at having a great year and going and knocking off those teams. It will spread the talent around. That makes it better. Where do you fall on all of that? We'll address more of it when we come back on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
You want me to add any time into this?
How long is it?
1:32, 3.
Yeah, take it to 4 if you don't mind, because I'm gonna have to run to the restroom here in a minute.
All right, let's make it 4.
Perfect.
The Georgia Bulldogs are the first team to win consecutive.
No, Chris, turns out that the Crypto Magnum Supermax.com Bowl did not make my radar this year. Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? All right, in the restroom, ladies and gentlemen. I will be back in just a minute. Don't go nowhere. All right, kids, we are back.
And help your engine get more miles. Right now, you can start with an STP extended life oil filter for only $38.99. Go farther with better fuel efficiency. Get the parts you need when you need them at AutoZone or AutoZone.com. Restrictions apply.
As a Walgreens pharmacist, I talk with people all the time about little tips and tricks for filling their Medicare prescriptions, like taking advantage of Walgreens 90-day refills to save them a trip, or using Refill by Scan, which is super easy and right on your phone. And for anybody worried about prescription costs, I say, hey, we got you, with low-cost copays on many medications.
Let's talk about making things easier. Walgreens is here. Fill your way and save at walgreens.com/Medicare. See pharmacists for restrictions and exclusions.
Always streaming wherever you are on the Odyssey app.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate. Brandon filling in for the great one, Lonzo, under the weather today. We appreciate the hard work Brandon's doing over there. Those of you on the stream, appreciate you joining us as well. Let me get a few texts that have come into the show here on the air. Text line's open for you, 71307, 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, FAN. We'll read them on the air. You want your shout out? Put your name on the end of it. Texter says, Rob, as a Clemson fan, we were not good enough for the college football playoff. TCU is better than us, and look what happened to them. Well, as Abe Gordon pointed out back in the first segment, and I agree with him. And by the way, if you miss a segment and you want to catch up with it, including our interview with Abe Gordon, you can go to thefanupstate.com. In the middle of the page, there's a button that says podcast. Drop it down to the Rob Brown Show, and you can download every hour of the show and not miss a moment of it. As Abe said back in the opening segment, I don't think there is a college football team that played this year that was beating Georgia last night. Georgia played their best game of the year, and they had some pretty good games. Nobody was getting by the dogs last night. They were on point. They saved their best for the biggest game. That being said, we look best four teams. Clemson gets by South Carolina. They could have made the argument they were one of them, with their only loss coming to a then-ranked Notre Dame team on the road. A Notre Dame team that did go on to beat the South Carolina team that beat them. If they'd have gotten by South Carolina, the argument would have been there. I'm not saying Clemson would have beat Georgia. I don't think Bama would have beat Georgia last night. I don't think Ohio State at their best would have beat Georgia. I don't think Michigan would have beat Georgia. But you play the games anyway because you never know who's going to have an on night and an off. Bo texted in and said, have you seen how drunk Stetson was on Good Morning America this morning for round 2? I have not, but I want to. Hey, man, Stet's 25 years old. If he decided to knock back some whiskey last night, he has my full endorsement. I did. It was the only way I was getting through the second half of that game. Texter said, this is from the conversation we had last hour about Bama and Kirby and Dabo and how these guys run their show. And my thoughts on it, my take on it was, Nick Saban taught Kirby Smart how to run a football team. Kirby Smart is now teaching Nick Saban how to get the guys there that want to be there and want to play for the G or the A or the O or the C or whatever, right? I think that Kirby Smart has figured out what you need to do to make kids feel like they are valued by the school, like the school values them. And I think that is the mentality kids have now. And if you want those kids to come to you, you've got to show them that mentality to be true on your campus. I think Kirby's doing that as good as anybody else right now, if not better than everybody else. Texter said it's how Alabama gets players from Hawaii. And again, Nick Saban's kind of, and Saban treats his players really well. I've been around it. I've seen it. But it is a very shirt and tie, business-like approach. There are some kids that thrive in that type of environment. It's all about environment, right? There are some kids that thrive in that type of environment, and then there are others that do not, right? I used to hear the old illustration back when we were always having the test about the fights about standardized tests in schools, right? And there were some people going, oh, you got to find out what these kids know. And there's other people that go, yeah, but like some kids just aren't great test takers. They thrive in other conditions. They're going to be at their best in other conditions. If my test is who can climb the tree, the shark is going to fail, the monkey's going to win. But if my test is catch a fish underwater, the results are the opposite. It's about the environment. Nick Saban has a very specific environment. College football players are becoming less and less excited about playing in the shirt and tie business approach. It doesn't mean there aren't any. And the ones that they are, Saban is very good about getting those kids to play under the Crimson A. Build your environment to fit the current attitude of college football players and make them feel valued there. Kirby's doing a great job. That is why I think you are seeing the beginning of a Georgia dynasty. Texter says, Rob, Stetson Bennett is a legitimately good quarterback. The best stats in the league in many categories. Damn good. He's 25. Kid can slang the ball. He is a good quarterback. Nobody's arguing he's a bad quarterback. We're arguing, will he be successful at the next level? And as Joey B popped in the stream and said earlier, the fact that Brock Purdy stepped in San Francisco as the third string quarterback, took over, and not only are the Niners in the playoffs, but they're in as the 2 seed, shows you that with the right system, it can be done. It can be done. So if if Stet latches on with the right team, sure, I think he could have a good NFL career. Do I think he's Aaron Rodgers? No. But with the right system and a team built around him, is he good enough to carry a team that's built for a run game and defense like the Panthers? Hell yeah. Absolutely, I do. Texter said, Rob, did you see the interview with Nick Saban at halftime talking about how Georgia has taken over college football? It was hilarious. Yeah. David Pollock, the rocks on David Pollock last night, the former Georgia Bulldog, 3-time All-American. David Pollock last night looked Nick Saban in the face and said, Georgia's taken over college football, which the second half of that sentence would be from the University of Alabama to Bama's head coach. And listen, I respected Pollock for having the stones to go with that. I respected him for having the rocks to go with that because Saban brought himself into that world. And if Saban's going to bring himself into that world, he's got to be a commentator, not the head coach of the University of Alabama. Somebody asked at our little football party last night and said, why is Saban here and not back at Alabama working and recruiting? I'm like, dude, he is recruiting right now, right? Nick Saban had more FaceTime during the national championship game than Kirby Smart and Sonny Dykes did. He is recruiting. Texas said, what game? I watched a murder. Correct. That game was a snuff film. That game was violence porn, is what that game was. Texter said, Rob, did any listener predict correct the final score? Did any listener predict the correct final score? No. The closest to it was our guy, Cole Bryson. So Cole's going to get a segment at the end of the week. Cole, you know what? Cole's earned it. I might even let Cole come in and just co-host the show with me. Cole earned it. Cole went Georgia 45-14. My man Kevin said 41-14. He was very, very close, but Cole edged him by giving a little less credit, a little more credit to Georgia, and it worked out well for him. No exact final score. Cole B was closest. He gets to host the segment. Texas said, Rob, I can't listen today about the game. I stopped watching after halftime. You were not alone at all. I threw a football party at my house last night. I had a 20 24 people come over and watch the game. Did a little shrimp boil, a little low country boil. Got to be halftime. And a few of the boys were like, let's go outside. I had all the beer in the coolers out back. Let's go grab a brewski. We walked out back, cracked a couple of cold ones with the boys, and started talking. And kept talking. And absolutely zero people were like, hey, we should go back in and see if the game started back up. I looked through the back window, the glass back door, and they had already played like 6 minutes of the third quarter. Nobody cared. I'm like, hey, fellas, I'm going to migrate back in to finish up this game. And the response was like, oh, yeah, I guess we should. I guess we have to. And it was less because they wanted to watch the game and more because they're like, we don't want the host of this football party to be inside by himself. We'll go hang out with him while he watches the game because nobody else cares. The only person in the building who gave a damn about the second half of that game last night was my guy Skrilla, a Georgia fan. Skrilla wanted to go in and watch his team win a natty. I wanted to go in and watch his team win a natty, so I was ready to talk about it today. Nobody else cared at all. Texter said Stetson Bennett could be Colt McCoy or Case Keenum in the NFL. I actually think he might be better than Colt McCoy. I think he might be better than Case Keenum. But again, and I think this is true for all of those guys, I have no doubt that there is a laundry list of Colt McCoys and Case Keenums who are NFL quality at its lower levels. But if a coach built the right team around them, would be good enough, right? And my argument, and I said this like 6 times last night, my argument is, ladies and gentlemen, Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Who the hell's Brad Johnson? Exactly. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl because the Buccaneers recognize, all right, Brad Johnson's not a guy that's going to go 22 of 28 for 398 and 3 touchdowns. So they built a hell of a run game around him, and they built behind Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp a hell of a defense to carry that team. And it worked. Everybody's looking for the superstar quarterbacks. Everybody's looking for a bona fide HOFer at the QB spot. More teams need to be looking for a guy like Stetson Bennett, who makes the right throws, makes the smart throws, can get out of trouble if he gets into it, and doesn't panic, and then build a defense and a run game around him. We'll see. All right, let's take a break. That is 2 hours in the book. There's 1 hour left. If you want to keep talking, Georgia TCU, the phone line's open, 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. Or the text line's available at 71307. Start your text with FAN. When we come back, though, let's flip it up to the big league. Let's go to the NFL. Let's take a look at the playoff bracket. A lot of folks talking Tampa Bay v. Dallas. I'll knock that discussion out, too, when we come back on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. Brandon says looking more like Drew Brees for the stat comp. Brees had...
Brees is a Hall of Famer.
Joe was at the party last night. He said the third quarter was, hey, Skrilla, did they score again? And continuing to talk hockey with Mark Shelley. That is absolutely how it played out. I had at my house last night both the voice of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits and the COO of the Greenville Triumph. My house was a powerhouse in local sports last night.
Nice.
Felt good. Felt good.
See a difference in how you can speak and how conversational you can be in just a few weeks.
Babbel isn't just lessons. You can listen to podcasts, play games, watch videos. You can even take live online classes with a language teacher.
Did we get Greenville Drive tickets?
Nope.
Damn.
I love the Drive. I love Drive games.
Yeah.
they do not put a ton of emphasis into working with local media.
I know we get Swamp Rabbit. I like going to those.
Do a lot with the Rabbits. We do a lot with the Triumph. If you want to get into soccer, we do a lot with Furman. We can get tickets to that. We can get tickets with Wofford. Hell, when the Panthers come down and do their spring training, they hook us up with stuff. The only team that we have a hard time having a working relationship with is the Drive, or at least I do.
Now, if I were to ask you guys who inherited a worse situation, Beaver or Muschamp, what would you say? Number one from Video Afternoon Sports Talk.
Offsides with Mark Ryan. Upstate.
Experience the future of connectivity with Spectrum One. You get Spectrum Internet delivering the fastest speeds in the nation for $49.99 a month. Advanced Wi-Fi for enhanced privacy and security, free for 12 months. And a Spectrum.
Chris, the Greenville Drive is our minor league baseball team here in Greenville, South Carolina. Skrilla said, had a fun, great night at the Casa del Brown. Yeah, the Casa de Love was rocking last night, man. We had a good time. I appreciate y'all coming by. You and Joey B and Andrew and all the boys. I'm sorry, but there just isn't a ton of 5'11", 190-pound, 25-year-old rookie quarterbacks that pan out as top-notch NFL players, guys. No. Again, it would have to be a very specific scenario. Very specific scenario for Step Bennett to work out. But again, Drew Brees was 5'10", maybe 5'11", maybe, and it worked out. But that was because Sean Payton recognized what he was and built a system around him. There aren't a lot, and it would take Stet's absolute best. That's why I said it would have to be a very specific scenario.
So if you test positive and are at high risk, act fast, even if your symptoms feel mild. Ask your provider if an authorized oral treatment could be right for you. Visit treatcovid19.com.
Do you have 3 ex-wives and your current trophy wife wants a life insurance policy?
If you have 3 ex-wives, you're in trouble.
If you have 3 ex-wives, stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. Just be single, get drunk, go home with loose women from the bar. Just stop.
Solution for your previous policies as well. You may even save enough money to lighten the load on your new $1 million policy. Remember, Big Lou, he's like you, except he's only on number 2. Call Term Provider at 800-700-6898. That's 800-700-6898 for $1 million in term.
What time's the charm? All right, we're about to come back on.
Perfect. The third, the final, the best, the money hour of the Rob Brown Show goes right now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rob Brown. My man Brandon is in today. He is filling in for the great one, Lonzo. Zoe is out sick today. You know it. You know Zoe's hurt when he takes a sick day. He's like me. I don't take sick days. If I got to work from home, I'll work from home. But Zoe, not feeling it. So he'll hopefully return with us later on this week. Hope he gets to feeling better. Brandon is doing a killer job, and we appreciate you, big dog.
Thank you.
Of course. So wrap up some thoughts on the Natty, and then we'll flip it over and talk NFL. Texter said, Rob, Alabama has had higher recruiting classes for the last 5 years over Georgia. It's more than just recruiting. I agree. And that is partially what I've said, right? It is not just recruiting all the stars. Although Georgia is kind of doing that, as mentioned, over 40 players on the roster. Somebody reported earlier this week, over 40 players on the roster, 4 stars or better. TCU had like 14, and like 3 or 4 of those came in this year from the portal. But it is also making sure, that the guys that come in are playing for the G instead of the name on the back of the jersey. And I think you can see that within the Georgia Bulldog program, and I think that's because of Kirby. I think Kirby understands what college football players of 2023 are looking for more than anybody else right now. But we'll see. Texas says, Rob, I went to sleep at the half. That game wasn't even good enough to drink a beer to. I did. Mainly because standing outside in the cold drinking a beer was more entertaining than watching that game. All right, let's get to the NFL brackets, shall we? They were introduced to us this weekend, finalized as thus. The Chiefs locked down via a win over the Raiders in Week 18, the 1 seed in the AFC. They are the only team that will catch a bye out of the gate. On Super Wildcard Weekend in the AFC, we will have the number 2 Buffalo Bills taking on the 7 seed Dolphins. The number 3 seeded Cincinnati Bengals catching the Baltimore Ravens. And the 4-5 game are the Jacksonville Jaguars and the LA Chargers. I'll tell you, man, I think it's a 3-horse race. Now, a chunk of this is going to be whether or not Lamar comes back healthy, comes back happy. Brandon and I got to talking about Lamar Jackson during one of the breaks, and this is why you should join us on the stream at facebook.com/thefanupstate or search and subscribe to The Rob Brown Show on Twitch and YouTube. We got to talking about Lamar earlier in the day on the stream. Teams are starting to be connected with Lamar, who is scheduled to be a free agent at the end of this year. Remember, the Ravens tried to extend Lamar. Lamar did not like the contract, which doesn't shock me. He wants Russell Wilson money. He wants Deshaun Watson money. Part of the reason that folks were so damn mad, scratch that, owners and GMs were so mad at the Broncos and the Browns.
Is that guarantee?
Is that guarantee money and how much of it there is, right? Russell Wilson is making a few coins shy of $250 million.
I think it's all guaranteed too, isn't it?
Yep. Same with Deshaun.
Ouch.
Now they kind of structured Deshaun's interestingly, obviously, but Deshaun's got fat stacks coming too. And so a guy like Lamar, and if I ask who you want to run your franchise for the next 3 years, Lamar or Russ Wilson?
I'm going to say Lamar.
Yeah, you're damn right you are, because that's the right answer, right? So a guy like Lamar is looking around, knowing that most of us feel that way, and is going to go, wait a minute, Russ Wilson is getting $250 million. Deshaun Watson is getting slightly less, but in that ballpark. Lamar Jackson don't deserve that? Of course he does. And a team's going to have to come off of it to get Lamar, and it's going to be an interesting way that they'll have to structure that contract. And the question is Lamar mad at Baltimore, where he wants to play, for not immediately jumping to give him that deal, right? Is he going to take it out on Baltimore? Blah, blah, blah. Lamar plays, the Ravens got a crack, but the Bengals have hit their stride going to play, same as they did last year. hit the stride right at the playoffs. Remember, the Bengals had a tough start to the year. 0-2 out of the gate coming off a Super Bowl hangover? They have found it. And Joey B looks like Joey B again. The Ravens are good. Specifically, the front seven of that defense, after they added Roquan from Chicago, the Ravens' interior defense is very good. The problem is the Bengals don't have to beat you up the middle to win that game, right? The Ravens are absolutely kryptonite to a power run first team. The Bengals can get you anywhere on the field, right? I like the Bengals in that matchup. If the Dolphins had good Tua playing, maybe I'd give them a crack against Buffalo. But Josh Allen, the more pressure is on him, the more he does Josh Allen things. Josh Allen is on top of his game right now. It's Allen, it's Mahomes, Brady. Even Brady, not this year, does not belong in the same breath as Mahomes and Allen. Your AFC championship. Look, I hate the city of Jacksonville, Florida. It is America's worst city. It sucks. It's a terrible place. Don't go there. That being said, there is kind of a soft spot in my heart for the Jags this year. And I can't really explain it. I know it's got something to do with Travis and Trevor, right? Because, as I said yesterday on the program, and one of the more elegant takes I've had in a while, Urban Meyer was the problem. Urban Meyer was the problem. Urban Meyer is the worst non-interim NFL coach in the history of the NFL. Sincerely. Urban Meyer was the worst non-interim head coach in the history of the National Football League. Some of even y'all started to write off Trevor Lawrence last year. I told you the dude's good. Is he generational good at the NFL level? I don't think so. Is it good enough to win at the NFL level? You damn right he is. And
Do you think he goes to the Super Bowl, though, one day?
I think the possibility is very much there. I think that Shad Khan rolled the dice with Doug Peterson, a guy just a couple of years removed from a Super Bowl win as a head coach. Rolled the dice with Peterson. Peterson is absolutely a guy who can develop quarterbacks, right? That was a good move. Now the question is going to be, after the Jags won the AFC South and made the division, does Shad Khan, who I honestly think was happy to have a lower than mediocre football team, because I think when the NFL decides that it's ready to have a team permanently international, Shad Khan will take the Jags to London, right? And I think he was more than happy to have as little profit coming into that team as possible, because it's easier to move a team if you can go to the league and go, hey, we're making no money in Jacksonville. Let us move to London. New, fresh franchise. We'll pick up steam there. I think that was a good hire. The question is, now that they have won the AFC South, and I do think the Chargers are a better football team than the Jags, but I do think the Jags can win that game. Not will, but can win that game. If the Jags win that game, beat the Chargers, move on into round number 2 and catch the Chefs, where they will lose.
Mm-hmm. Isn't Patrick Mahomes like 27-0 in December, January range?
It's stupid. It's stupid. If the Jags move out of the wild card round and into the divisional round, the question that comes up next is going to be, will Shad Khan start running his NFL team like the billionaire that he is? And if he does, yeah, the Jags could absolutely make a run, right? They've been there before. So it's not like they've never done it, can't do it. They have been there before. I'd be interested to see if, now that he has a franchise quarterback who is partnered up with a run game and a wide receiver core that he has clearly built chemistry with, and a head coach who understands how to work that process, is he willing to run his team like an NFL team instead of a held investment, a liquid investment that he is angling towards moving to London? And we'll find out. Over on the NFC side, the Philadelphia Eagles grabbed the number 1 seed and the first round bye and home field all the way through. The 49ers grabbed the 2 seed, just like we all predicted they would on the arm of Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy. We're having a damn story, man. Comes into the year as a practice squad / third stringer. Trey Lance goes down. Jimmy G goes down. Brock Purdy is thrust into the limelight alongside Christian McCaffrey. And my man got the 2 seed.
Beats the GOAT. Oh, and beats the GOAT.
Yeah. Beats Brady on the way out. I will say this. I'm very interested to see what Jalen Hurts does in the postseason. Jalen went down. I'll tell you my favorite broadcast story of the last 2 weeks. Favorite broadcast story of the last 2 weeks was Boomer Esiason's son was doing radio. I can't remember what was the guy's name. Anyway, one of them went on the air, and there was an argument going on about MVP voting in the league this year. Somebody made the argument that Jalen Hurts is the MVP, right? This is before Gardner Minshew took over. Jalen Hurts goes down. Gardner Minshew steps in, takes over, and the Eagle offense was just not good, right? Not good. They lost to the Saints. Not good. The next day, as is the way that this industry works, that take was proven so incorrect that ESPN and Fox and CBS Sports, everybody was running. Everybody was running with the audio from that take, right? It was such a terrible take. Let me go back to my Twitter and see if I can find out. I absolutely want to credit the take. That's how bad it was. Anyway, the take was absolutely atrocious, man. Absolutely atrocious. He got smoked because of it and went the next day and he's like, oh, I wish they'd stop running that take. I wish they'd stop running that take. You're making me look bad. It's like, look, we all have a bad take. We all get run because of that take. Welcome to media. Damn, I wish I had that clip pulled up because I need to go find it back. I'll find it. Anyway, Jalen Hurts absolutely made a push towards being the MVP because of how that whole thing played out. The Eagles are better with Jalen. Are they the best team in the NFC? San Francisco, I truly think, even with Brock Purdy, San Francisco goes to the Super Bowl.
Wow, really?
That defense is quietly one of the better defenses. Oh, by the way, it was Phil Simms' kid. That's who it was. It was Chris Sims. It was Phil Simms' kid. Not Boomer's kid. My bad, Boomer. And my bad, Gunner. It was Sims' kid. It was the Nepo baby. Anyway, the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. That defense is quietly one of the best defenses assembled in the last decade. And the focus is on Brock Purdy. Everybody's talking offense, which is fine, right? McCaffrey is still doing Christian McCaffrey things. Congratulations, making it all the way through the season without a decimating injury. The story is all about San Francisco's offense, but the reality is that defense is carrying that San Francisco 49ers team right now. And they're damn good. They are going to make very quick work of the Seattle Seahawks in the opening round. They are going to catch the winner of Vikings-Giants in round 2. So you're either going to catch Minnesota, who has a playoff implosion all the time, or you're going to catch the Giants, who got in as a wild card team. And do you trust the New York Giants? Listen, I like the Giants. I love what the Giants did. Went on a good run to open the season, but ever since then, it's just like they're just spinning wheels. San Francisco will out defense Seattle. They will out defense Minnesota or New York. And they're good enough to win a close game against Philly. The interesting team in all of this to me is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? I'm very interested in Tampa. Because on paper, an 8-9 team that won a division that was 3 other 7-10 teams checking it behind them, on paper, has no business playing with any of these teams in the playoffs. I think we all agree. But I want to take you back 2 weeks. Tampa Bay is taking on the Panthers of Carolina. Tampa Bay recognizes that if they win, they go to the playoffs, and if they lose, Carolina's only got to beat New Orleans, and they take that spot from them. And in the game where it was on the line the most for Tampa Bay, Tom Brady looked like Tom Brady again.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady looked like Tom Brady again. He plays his best ball when the heat is cranked up. And I have to expect going into the playoffs against the Dallas team that absolutely boated the bed on Sunday against the Washington Commanders, a Cowboys team led by Dak, who has reverted back into Dak Prescott. I think somebody screwed with the number on his fancy mattress in the commercials. Tampa's going to get by Dallas. This is in Tampa. It's at Ray J. They are going to get by Dallas. They're going to catch Philly in round 2 on the road, a place where Brady, I believe, is undefeated in his career at Philly. I believe. Mike Evans welcomed himself back to the NFL against Carolina, and they found a little something. Now, they didn't show it against Atlanta, but keep in mind, they were already locked into the playoffs. There was nothing there. Atlanta, on the other hand, was one of those teams that's like, hey, we got to show out on the way out the door. Played decent football. Played some of the better football you guys have played in a few weeks. I've got Tampa v. Dallas circled in round 1 because if Tampa comes out and looks like they did against Carolina 2 weeks ago against the Dallas Cowboys, a Tampa-San Francisco NFC Championship game is in the future.
Wow, that's a big matchup.
I stand by it. We'll be talking football next Monday. Let's take a break. We'll come back, get to a few more things before we get out of here, including, let's have a little fun on the show today. I'm dedicated to my team, right? I got a Florida Lee tattooed on my back. I'm dedicated to my team. There is one guy in Green Bay, Wisconsin that is up the game in terms of dedication to the squad. I want to see if you guys are on his level or would go to his level. I'll tell you what I mean when we come back on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. Got a live read, guys. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
It's after Mark Ryan's
All right, dudes and dudettes, we are back. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. If you're enjoying the show, do us a favor, share it on your stream. Share it on your stream. Let the people know.
Discovery will come in next, and then we'll be back on. Okay,
that's fine.
New time. Now 9 to noon, only on the fan upstate.
10 seconds.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon filling in for Lonzo. I am Rob Brown. We are glad to have you here with us listening to the show. If you'd like to get on board, you can do it 864-448-3772. 864-448-3772. Mention the Rob Brown Show and get on the air. You can also text us at 71307, 71307. That's 844-326-3663. Sorry about that. I'm looking at my QC Kinetics script still. 864-326-3663 to call in and get on the air, or shoot us a text at 71307, 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, and we'll read them on the air. Let's talk a little bit about the Panthers, the Dirty Birds, and the rest of the NFC South with Brandon for just a minute. Right now, I think you guys are in a spot to play some of the best football Atlanta's played since Jamal left in the Dirty Bird era, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're a quarterback away. Mariota was obviously not the answer.
I knew that from the get-go.
Yeah, I think most of us assume that. Right? Nobody thought, oh, yeah, he's just been in the wrong place. No, he's okay.
He quit the team, too.
Yeah, he's okay. Desmond Ridder, probably not the guy either, right? It's a project pick. He'd absolutely be a great guy to keep on as a backup. You know, if somebody goes down for a couple of games, he can fill in nicely. You can run the ball around him. What's the play here? What's the play? Is it trade way up? I mean, you guys don't have a ton of capital to work with in the draft. Is it to try to get a Lamar out of free agency, or do you give Desmond a year to prove that he is or isn't?
Well, the Falcons hold I think it's the number eighth pick in the draft this year. I think I would honestly try and trade up to get CJ Stroud, because I agree with you that I don't think Desmond Ridder is the answer. But we are playing some good football. I mean, Desmond Ridder shows signs of potential, but he needs to develop more. And I don't think that the quarterback he was, quote, developing under Marcus Mariota was a good answer. Personally, I don't think Arthur Smith is a good coach either. I think that Atlanta needs to get a new head coach. That's just my feelings.
Honestly, I'm not even really that upset about the coaching, because listen, I've said this a couple of times. Of the NFC South, I think the Carolina Panthers are in the best position right now, right? Regardless of who the coach is next year, whether they go, I think they're interviewing 2 or 3 different offensive coordinators. They're interviewing Wilkes. And obviously, if Harbaugh comes from the league or comes from college football up to the league, I think Carolina's got the leg up on that too. So I'm not concerned about coaching. They have an owner who bought this as an asset. They have an owner that I think is a bit of an egomaniac and is a little upset by the fact that his fan base doesn't like him right now, and he needs to fix that. They've got a run game, got a good offensive line, solid wide receiver core, and a defense that, with a couple of exceptions, the Tampa Bay game 2 weeks ago that cost them the playoffs being one of them, is pretty good.
What is their cap space, though?
They are, I want to say, middle of the NFL. Like, they've got room to work, but as I have said many, many times on the show, with a good GM, cap space is imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different ways to structure contracts to make cap hit burdens that much less. And also, if you feel a window is open, you can do what the Saints have done. They are paying for it now, but what the Saints have done, and basically backload a ton of contracts so that you can make all the moves now, and then one day it'll fall apart and you'll have to get rid of everybody. But Carolina's in a spot where they can do all of that and be good right now. I think Atlanta has the chance to be the next best positioned team in the NFL, right?
I think Atlanta has like $90 million in cap space.
Ton of cap space. A pretty standard draft in terms of available picks coming up. I do not dislike your head coach. In fact, I think it's the first time in a while that I looked at Atlanta and was like, they're finally on the same page, right? Like when Dan Quinn left, I'm actually shocked, to be honest with you. Dan Quinn is being discussed as like one of the top 2 or 3 head coaches of it. I don't get it. We all see what happened in Atlanta. I don't get it. But I think you're on the right coach. I honestly think, and I've said this a number of times, I think you have the best owner in the National Football League.
Oh, I agree 100%.
I think Arthur Blank might be the best owner in the National Football League in terms of being, team-friendly, fan-friendly. I think Atlanta's positioned very well. I think you guys just have to figure out a way to get a quarterback. I don't think you're going to have the ability to trade up because it's to me, there's 2 quarterbacks in this draft worth a move for. Bryce and CJ.
Yep.
Only 2 guys worth a move for. I don't think that you're in a spot. If you guys made a move to jump up to grab one of those 2 cats, you're basically not going to be able to add anything else around them for the next couple of years because it's going to cost you a chunk of what you have in this year draft and your first round pick next year. I wouldn't want to do that. But if you can grab a Lamar off the free agency market, Derek Carr, I think would be a good fit for a year or 2 until you find out how you're going to get that next guy. I think those options are on the table, and I think the piece is there in a year where the chickens have come home to roost for the New Orleans Saints, right? They are about to have to start letting people go to make up for the cap mortgage of the last few years when they were trying to sneak in one more Super Bowl run before the window shut. And I think the window shut this year. And I think Dennis Allen's neck was under it when it did. And when Tampa Bay loses Brady, a lot of the guys that have been there are probably going to either follow him or go elsewhere. That's what happens. That's what's happened to the Patriots. Look at what they're dealing with now, right? I think the Panthers are the best setup team in the NFC South starting next year. And I think you guys have the chance to be the second best team. I just don't know how you go about fixing the quarterback situation.
That's the biggest issue is the quarterback.
And I don't know how you fix it. That's the problem. Like a lot of other teams like Carolina, if they really want the franchise quarterback, they got 8 picks in this draft. They can make the move to jump up and either get Bryce or CJ Stroud. Stroud's the preference. The good news is that Chicago isn't drafting a quarterback. They're going to roll with JF, with Justin Fields. They're not drafting a QB, which means that if they're smart about it, the 1 pick is up for sale, and Carolina's got
the capital
to get it, to buy it, and they can go get CJ. I like Bryce. I'd prefer CJ Stroud. Carolina can fix that situation if they truly feel that's the one piece that's missing. They get their coach. They ask who he wants. They make the move to get that guy. You guys don't have that luxury available to you right now. So my question is, how does Atlanta fix the quarterback situation, knowing that for the most part, a quarterback and I think a top-tier running back being added to the mix will be big. How
you think Algiers a pretty good running back?
I think you're okay. I think today in the NFL, you need 2, right? You need a bona fide. I think you need what Carolina has. You need a Deontay Foreman who's a bona fide number 1, and you need a Chuba Hubbard that can come in and switch the pace up. And I think if you can find those things, you're in good shape. like I said, I don't think that the Falcons are far off right now. I think they're a little bit behind Carolina. I think they're streets ahead of the New Orleans Saints. And I think when Brady leaves, that Tampa's in trouble. Algire's good. Is he great? Not ready to go that far. Obviously, Cordarrelle Patterson had a year this year. Do I want to bank on him replicating it next year? Yeah, maybe.
But he's getting up in his age too.
Correct. That's why it's a yeah, maybe to me. But again, and this is what I've talked about, quarterback situation has to get fixed.
Yes.
The answer is not on your roster right now. It's not Logan Woodside. It's not Felipe Franks. It's not Desmond Ridder.
Definitely not Felipe Franks.
Correct. So then how do you do it when you don't have what you need to go get a CJ Stroud? Skrilla just popped up and said the O-line is an issue for Atlanta as well. I don't disagree. If you're going to, and this is one thing that a lot of teams blow it on. I think the Chicago Bears are doing this with Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields can be a damn good quarterback. I think he can be a damn good quarterback. The problem is in Chicago, they went and got him. They built up on defense. They let Roquan go because of it, and they can't figure out why the offense is sputtering. Well, that's because you got a good quarterback and nothing around him. Justin Fields can go for 80 rushing yards a game. You should make an elected 80 and not he's scrambling for his life and he pops one or two every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried you guys are in the same spot, but without the talent of a Justin Fields under center to kind of level it out a little bit.
You know, as what we're watching, I think it's First Take, and they were talking to Stephen A. about because Chicago owns the number one pick this year. Will they trade Justin Fields? He said they should absolutely trade Justin Fields and draft CJ Stroud or Bryce Young.
I don't see the need for it. I think Justin Fields is fine. The only risk you have is you have Justin Fields. I mean, he got banged up last year. You have him for what? 3 more years on a contract? 2 more years on a contract.
2 more, yeah.
And if you don't do anything to build around him, then yeah, when the rookie contract's off, he's gone, right? Whereas you get CJ Stroud, you got 4 years to build around him, and I get that. But how valuable is that trade for that one pick if there are going to be 3 or 4 teams in a bidding war to get it? Chicago, if they made, for instance, the trade with Carolina, could drop down to the, 9 pick? Still draft inside the top 10, add a first rounder for next year, potentially, and a couple of seconds and thirds elsewhere. Chicago with the one. In fact, I even think one of the best things for Carolina is that Houston can't even tank correctly and won against Indy this weekend. They are taking a QB at number 2. They just are. If they were at number 1, CJ Stroud's already drafted, right? We don't even need to start the clock. Goodell can walk out on draft night and go, welcome to the 2023 National Football League draft. With the first pick, the Houston Texans have selected CJ Stroud. Don't even need to start the clock and all the drama. Just let it happen. And the Bears pick at number 2 becomes less valuable. But drafting at number 1 with a 3-14 record, drafting at number 1 means CJ Stroud is in play for a lot of teams. A lot of teams. All right. Let me get a call in here before we go. We'll get in here just a second. Let me get Brandon to screen that call, and then we'll get him up on the board. Carolina is well positioned because they have the ability to make a move. They have the ability to make a move. Atlanta doesn't. But outside of that, I think Atlanta is really well positioned if they can figure out the QB spot, if they can go figure out an offensive line. I think a lot of everything else is already built in Atlanta. You got a good young cornerback and safety rotation. You got an aggressive front four. I think you're very close to being ready to take the next step. I just don't know what direction you go with it. Let's take a break. We'll come back here in just a minute, and we will wrap up the show. Your last chance to get your thoughts in on the Natty from last night. Georgia puts the beatiest of beatdowns of all time on TCU. What does that mean for college football moving forward? Got your NFL brackets. I've told you who I like in the AFC and NFC championship games. We'll talk about that if you want to get to it and a whole lot more when we come back on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate.
I hate scam calls.
We get so many of them.
Good show today.
Thanks, buddy.
Trey said, "Hey Rob, would you trade Sean Payton for the Bears' #1 pick?"
Yeah, I would. I would. We don't have one. Here's the only problem. I would trade Sean Payton for the 1 pick, and then I would trade the 1 pick away. And
Really?
start. Yeah, because
Stock up.
Yeah, I mean, what are we going to do right now? I am already aware that next year is a bust year for us, right? Like there are just some years that you go in knowing it's a tank, not a tank year, but we're just not going to be good because we've got to rebuild the roster, and all that money that we've unloaded these guys comes off the books at the end of next year. So the year after that, we've got a shot. So I would probably, if I'm New Orleans, I'm honestly in this draft and maybe next year's too, I'm taking the Bill Belichick method of I'm just trading back everything I can trade back. Every time we're on the clock, I'm answering the phone and going, if anybody wants this pick, call us and make us an offer. And I'm just going to trade back and stockpile. In the NFL 2025 draft, I'm going to go into that with 15 picks.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to build a rookie dream team.
I heard they restructured Michael Thomas's deal finally.
I had to. It wasn't an option.
He's an injury-prone player. I think he needs to retire.
I mean, I think he can come back and make. Remember, it was the. Yeah, what was I about to say? It was. It was the leg that got injured this year was not the one he's had problems with. It was the other one. And part of that can come from compensation. When you know one knee's bad, you tend to favor the other knee.
Mm-hmm.
But he was so good before he started getting banged up that I think you give him another crack. But if he comes out and he gets hurt this year,
yeah,
you just gotta move on.
Do you want me to add any more time to this or no?
Yeah, I think another 60 on there.
Okay. I'll put a 60 in. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Niners versus the Bills in the Super Bowl.
I can see that. I
think the Bills finally win their Super Bowl.
I got this weird feeling about Tampa Bay.
Yeah. I think this is Tom Brady's final year with Tampa. Someone said he might go back to New England and finish up his career in New England.
Saw that.
But his numbers drastically fell off the rocker this year.
And
some people who get COVID-19 get it so bad. I found that it may be because they have a high risk factor, such as heart disease, diabetes, being overweight, smoking, and asthma. Even if symptoms feel mild, these factors can increase your risk of COVID-19 turning severe. So if you're at high risk and test positive, there are things you can do, like asking your healthcare provider if an authorized oral treatment is right for you. Learn about an option at treatcovid19.com. This message is sponsored by Pfizer.
Mark Ryan tells it like it is. Author of Overtime on the Michigan Wolverines, John Bacon always has unbelievable insight to offer about a specific topic of interest. Jim Harbaugh's possible flirtation with your very own Carolina Panthers. I'm going to quote your tweet here, John, from very good sources. The
possibility of Harbaugh leaving for the NFL is real. Nothing final, but if he goes, it would not be because of money, NIL, control, or just about anything regarding the position. It would be about growing frustration in college football itself.
It's two things. One, irritation with the NCAA, which is shared by Davos Mini and probably every coach we talk to. Well, it's kind of amazing to think about it. There's almost no rules left. And then there is, of course, I'm sure in the back of your head always. These days, the big beautiful thing that we know in the NFL, and there's an expiration date and a coach like him.
Number one for real afternoon sports talk.
Offsides with Mark Ryan.
3 to 7 on the Fan.
Upstate.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. It's powerful.
Did you see what Chris said?
Actively finds
I think Brady ends up in Vegas or Miami, Brandon.
We can talk about that. Those are, I think, the two most likely landing spots.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing Derek Carr in an Atlanta uniform. Hopefully he's not as bad as his brother
best
is.
option, honestly.
I remember when his brother played. God, his brother was terrible. All right, we're about to go back on. 10 seconds.
All right. A few more minutes before we wrap up the show. We were talking Tom Brady there a second ago. Chris has popped in, and from what I can tell via his Twitter profile, he's listening over in Las Vegas, Nevada, which I am a big fan of. I was talking with a lady friend last night. We got to get back out to Vegas. I like Vegas. Anyway, listening to Vegas, he said, I think Brady ends up in Vegas or Miami. I will tell you of the potential landing spots. Those are the top two on the list. I think you can add to that list a reunion with New England. I think you can add to that list, and I've gotten laughed at this before, but I stick with it. I think you can add to that list Charlotte, Carolina. Vegas is on it. Miami's on it. Charlotte, New England, and
What about New Orleans?
if Sean Payton came back. He's not going to go there to play for Dennis Allen. He's not going to go anywhere that has, I don't think, he's not going to go to do anywhere that has a defensive-minded coach, right? He's going to want to coach. He has watched what has happened, because think about it. Bruce Arians is there. Tampa Bay wins the Super Bowl, competes in an NFC championship game under Bruce Arians. NFC divisional round game. And they lose to the eventual Super Bowl champion, Los Angeles Rams. Bruce Arians leaves. Todd Bowles comes in. Todd Bowles, a defensive guy, doesn't really know how to help Brady construct the offense. Brady's a very good football player, but he's not an offensive coordinator. Tampa's offense is garbage this year, right? Until they beat the hell out of Carolina 2 weeks ago. But for the most part, they are what they are, man. They're an 8-win football team. They are what they are. So this is part of why I find very interesting the decision that the Panthers get to make about their head coach, right? My take on it has been for a minute. Yeah, Chris, that's right. San Francisco. That was the other thought. San Francisco. If they want to move on from Lance. So the thought for Carolina here is we talked about making a trade. Sean Payton is going to cost you a first-round pick. I don't think he's going to cost you much more than that, right? I don't think he's going to cost you. Saints fans think they're going to be getting like 2 firsts and a third for Sean Payton. You're not. You're going to get a first-round pick for Sean Payton. Sean Payton has 2 years left on his contract. After the 2024 season, he can go wherever he wants. But between now and then, you want him, you got to make a trade. If Carolina would be willing to come off of a first-rounder, which honestly, this year's not a bad year to do it with 8 other picks or 7 other picks in the draft. They're willing to come off of a first rounder and get Sean Payton. A 1-year Tom Brady rental is not the worst thing that would happen. Just a year. You got an offensive coach who knows how to draw up a game plan, who would, I think, be happy with having 2 running backs that are very good, a young wide receiver core, and a solid offensive line. 1-year rental of Tom Brady with Sean Payton would not be the worst thing that happens. Probably with Jim Harbaugh, too. I think he'd be willing to come play for, well, I don't know him. Might be willing to come play for Jim Harbaugh as well. Outside of that, Kyle Shanahan's a very good pick. Mike McDonald in Miami is a very good pick.
Offensive-minded guy.
Correct. Mike McDonald in Miami would be a great coach for Brady to link up with if that is his mindset in the direction he's looking to go in. I just don't know. But I suspect after this year, he's going to want out of Tampa. Unless Tampa's willing to go fire Todd Bowles, and we're going to see. But I don't think I don't know that they're willing to do that after a single year. So I don't know, man. The whole setup's very interesting. Chris says Derek Carr is a solid option in Atlanta. The man is a top 15 quarterback in the league. Yeah, I agree. And that's what Chris and I were talking about in the last segment. If we're looking for who comes into the ATL and takes over that spot, either as a permanent starter or a bridge QB, unless you can get Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr might be the best available option. He's going to be a relatively budget-friendly quarterback. He allows you to take all your picks and put them across the offensive line and the defense and get better there. Derek Carr is a really good option for Atlanta. Really good option in Atlanta. And was doing some solid stuff in Vegas until everything else there fell apart. So, I don't know. It's interesting. We'll find out. Ladies and gentlemen, the Georgia Bulldogs are your reigning, defending, undisputed college football national champions. Congratulations to all the dog fans out there that are listening to the show. I imagine it feels good. I don't know. My team hasn't won a natty in a very long time. Must feel nice. And you're in the process of building a dynasty. Say what you want. The Georgia Bulldogs are building a dynasty. Do us a favor. Follow us on Twitter. I am at The Rob Brown Show. You on Twitter? What's the Addy?
At Keeler Brandon.
There you go. At Keeler Brandon, at The Rob Brown Show on Twitter. Make sure you are following us across all the social media accounts at The Fan Upstate. And, hey, you got anything you want to get to? Starting tomorrow, we kind of hit a really interesting point of the season. Starting tomorrow, it's going to be predominantly NFL and college football fallout. As we get into the first round of the playoffs, we'll start filtering some basketball in here as well. We talked about it last week. I brought it up yesterday on the show. Clemson with a 5-0 run to start in conference play. That ain't bad, Jack. For a team that all y'all were looking to fire your head coach, my guys got you off to the best start that Clemson has had in 25 years, 23 years, whatever it is. 13-3 overall, 5-0 in conference, tops in the ACC right now. Yeah, we're going to start working some basketball in here. Steph Curry back tonight after missing a few weeks with his injury. Was averaging 30 a game before he went out hurt. Will he be able to get back to that level? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more when we get to tomorrow's edition of the show. Lonzo, I don't know if he'll be back or not. I hope he feels better. Brandon, I appreciate you coming in, man. Thanks. Great job today. Appreciate you. We, ladies and gentlemen, are off for 21 hours, and then we'll come back and we'll try again harder tomorrow. Thanks for listening. I'm Rob Brown. This is The Rob Brown Show. This is The Fan Upstate. Stream, you guys are fabulous. I appreciate y'all very much. Come back tomorrow. It will be even more fun. We'll see you then. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.